Well, I saw The Strangers Chapter 1, and it's pretty much exactly like everyone's saying it is. Just a carbon copy of the original, basically all of the same kind of story beats, obstacles that the characters face. They pretty much rehash all of it, with just maybe a bit of added context with this town and kind of the fate of the characters at the end being a tad different than it is in the original movie. And I assume all of these changes are basically just taking the bones of the original and putting this extra stuff in so that they could springboard to the sequels. My main question is, what's the point? It almost feels like this movie is just completely redoing the first one with some of that added stuff that they wanted to do so that they could carry it into those sequels, and it almost feels like they should have just springboarded straight into those sequels. When I was watching it, I had this thought the whole time, just why didn't they just go from the first movie and then carry it forward that way? Just take the first continuity and then keep going. But I guess it is because they wanted to make these minor tweaks to the story in the original so that they could make those work better as a cohesive trilogy. But it really shortchanges this movie though, because it leaves it feeling just ultimately superfluous. It really is just making the first one of this trilogy very dispensable, and it probably will at the end of the day be the most dispensable of the trilogy because it's so similar to the first movie. The thing I didn't understand the whole time while watching it was that fact that I didn't get why they couldn't just springboard from the first one. Why they didn't just jump into chapter 2 and kind of do it that way. And I answered my own question already about it, but it's just very clear that that's what they wanted to do in the first place. It really does feel like all they wanted to do was ever so slightly tweak the story of the first movie to serve whatever they actually wanted to do. And it left this movie just very uninspired feeling. Maybe that wouldn't have been a problem if they at least made it kind of more of an original stranger story. You could take that basic template and find new ways to have the strangers hunt them, have different situations where they're the prey in this. But it's odd because it feels like every misfortune, every obstacle they run into in this movie is just the stuff from the first one. They do all the same shit. The boyfriend/husband goes out. That's when she gets hunted. He comes back, doesn't believe her. They get crashed on. They have several interactions with the strangers. You have the interaction with him in the shotgun, with the trucks, pretty much all that stuff getting hunted in the woods. It's just all the same, which makes it so odd that they would really push how kind of different they're acting like it is when it really isn't. At the end of the day, I have no doubt in my mind that this is going to be the one that stands out the least of the three because of that nature of it. But still, I didn't hate it. I was at a very bare level entertained. It's an entertaining enough slasher movie. I probably don't hate it as much as other people, but my main issue kind of falls into the camp of, it's just too derivative and the characters are too stupid. Pretty much what everybody else is saying about this movie because it's so true. I don't know why they had to make them the dumbest motherfuckers ever, and that's coming from a trilogy of movies where the previous two had characters that did some stupid shit. In the first one, I've gone over it, but there's reasons why I forgive it. It feels like with the husband in particular, it's in line with his character that he's kind of a dumb guy. And then also too, the denial, the feelings that come up with what they deal with. It's just believable enough to me that they would make some of these decisions or be so jumpy and hair-triggered the way that they are throughout the movie. The second one, that's one of my biggest complaints, is that they're so stupid that it takes you out of the movie because you're just so baffled by the decisions they make. But an overlapping problem I have with the second movie and this movie is the fact that the characters were so dumb it takes you out of the plot. And then also the fact that the strangers just feel like these all-knowing, omniscient beings that know where you are at all times. They know where you're hiding. They know where you're gonna pop up. And then they are always just somehow from A to Z and without being detected out of nowhere. I still think this is overall a better movie than the second movie. And on its own, if it wasn't Strangers, if the first Strangers movie didn't exist and this was the first one, I don't think it would be as iconic, but it still would be considered an enjoyable movie. I think it would be a little better received. But everything that was being reported on about this movie before it happened, they swore up and down. Rennie Harlan swore up and down that this wasn't just a carbon copy of the original, when it really is. I don't know if that he's talking about it in the context of the totality of the trilogy. I know that this is supposed to be one long-form story of the strangers, and that's exactly what they're actually trying to go for, rather than these being individual movies in a series. But I can't get it out of my head just just the idea of what is the point of this. I feel like they almost should have done the thing that they do at the beginning of the Friday the 13th remake, where they basically spend the first like 10 minutes of it running through the basic Jason lore. They show a short version of the first two movies, Pamela Voorhees, Hey Sack Jason. I think that was a great choice, because why meander on a whole entire movie remaking that one when we all know what we actually want to get to? And the thing is, since they got that unoriginal stuff out of the way while still explaining that it happened, it allowed them to move the story forward and just give us an original Jason story. I'm gonna get into spoilers, by the way. With this, it feels like they should have done something similar. Maybe just show what happens in this movie in the first 10 minutes, show this whole basic thing. I guess you wouldn't have the same attachment to the characters, but you could build her up from there as a survivor or something. But what they should have done in this is just make the first 10 minutes of this movie be this movie. You could just show what happened with these people, show the different tweaks, really shorten it, and then just build up the main character as a survivor or something. I think that would have been a lot more compelling and just better than what they do here, and it would have allowed the story to actually move forward. That's the thing I am looking forward to about these sequels, is that they are actually at least going to move the story forward. We're going to see something different at some point, but that's kind of just exactly what baffles me about the approach to this first one. Everything about it screams unnecessary. Everything about it screams dumb. It really is just kind of a dumbed down remake of that original movie when they could have done something different. And I think it's very interesting that they had this idea of this 4 hours Strangers saga, but I do think this trilogy is going to be handicapped by the way that they did this first one, the way they approached it, the nature of how they approached it, and the fact that they didn't just tell a new story or springboard off of something in a way that was either the first movie or this summarized version that I'm talking about. If I had to guess, it's tough because this movie is actually making money, so they might actually attempt to put the second one in theaters. But I've heard a lot of rumblings of this. I actually thought that this was going straight to Amazon Prime for some reason, but I do anticipate that if not 2, 3 will probably end up on streaming. The reception is just so negative, but on the other end, it is the highest grossing horror movie or horror opening of this year as of now, and I do think that means something. I'm sure that this was made on a very small budget, or at least that they cut down on costs by filming all 3 of them in a row, and it was probably one contained budget, one contained shooting schedule. I mean, they were all filmed back to back to back, so why wouldn't it be? But I can't help but think that it was just such a mistake to do it the way that they did it this first time, and I don't think a lot of people are going to come back because of that. They should have just stuck with something more original, or because this movie just does not justify its own existence. Like I said, entertaining enough. I had a nice night out, can't complain too much, but it could have been so much more, especially too because I love that first Strangers movie. I think it's very good, very effective, and I was hoping to see something kind of give a little bit more or expand on that idea. I think this misses the mark. I think it misses what's so good about that first movie, but it keeps a few parts intact and it has a few effective scares, so I'll give it some credit where credit is due. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Am I right about this? Have you seen Strangers Chapter 1? Let me know. I'm GM Light. Have a good one.